But we know how technology works. You take something that used to require some skill, some expertise, and you make it easier.
Right.
I don't know how to work a satellite, but I have a cell phone. If you make it easier for people to press a button and print a gun, getting around court orders, getting around gun regulations of all kinds, do you not have some responsibility for what those people do with those weapons?
So there's two questions. Did I make it easier? And what happens if I did make it easier? Empirically, it's a question. I don't believe that today you printing a gun is easier than you going to buy a gun, you going to illegally make a gun from other tools, or you just finding one on the street or something. You could trip over guns in this country, right? Kids on the streets find them in trash cans, okay? This is not somehow 3D printing has now like opened up the debate. The other part is, well, and then don't you bear that responsibility? Look, I am a marginal, at best, player. I sit here in a warehouse in Austin, Texas. I've contributed to what? Over 5 years. Hundreds of thousands of downloads. How many times have you come in here and asked me about the times that people have used that gun? They haven't used it. So it's an empirical question.
Put the philosophy books away. Put the Constitution.
Philosophy?
Hold on. Put the seminar discussion to one side and answer me this. When somebody downloads a gun from your website with your blueprints and kills somebody with it, how are you going to feel personally?
I don't believe that if I allow you to download an AR-15, the full plans of an AR-15, I don't believe that I provided you anything other than the general knowledge of what an AR-15 is. I've given you no productive capability. You have to take it all that way yourself. I am no different from a publisher of information.
Hold on. You also sell a milling machine that allows people to finish the lower half.
You have to understand the debate. The file on my site, which everyone wants to stop,
is for a 3D plastic gun.
No,
I get
it's
that.
not. No, you don't get it. I have 10 files, right? Only one of those is 3D printable, and it's that little pistol. That's my little demonstration. The file for the AR-15, which we're talking about in this example, those are the full technical plans from the AR-15. That's how they've looked in computer-aided design for who knows, as long as there's been computers to aid design. If you have that information, you're no more enabled to make it than any other manufacturer or gunsmith in this country. You still have to put in all that effort, all that time. You still have to understand how to do it. I didn't make that easier, but I did give you the key if you did want to understand to make it, and I will not apologize.
Hold on, you didn't make it easier?
No, I gave you the plans. You can see what an AR-15 looks like.
Seems like that would make it easier.
My brother, if you can see what an AR-15 looks like, that doesn't mean you understand how to make it.
If I own a 3D printer, I can make the Liberator that you have on your site. If I buy that milling machine behind you from you, I can make an AR-15.
You can finish an AR-15 lower receiver with NC code. This is another conversation. This is a whole separate conversation.
It is a separate conversation, but it's underneath the banner of your goal is to make guns as readily available as possible. Is that not your goal?
I want to benefit the American rifleman in his legal pursuits. You can make an AR-15 in this country. You can understand how to make an AR-15. You can examine the plans of an AR-15. None of these are sanctioned activities. They are all expressly legal and have always been.
In your court filings, you've argued that it's in the public interest, everything you're doing. How?
Absolutely.
Walk me through your thinking on that.
Think about this. The minute any government authority under any color of law tries to impede publicly protected speech, it's against the interests of all Americans de facto.
I think people look at your First Amendment argument and think it's a clever way to win a legal battle. I think the reason there's a conversation right now, the reason you have more than a dozen attorneys general fighting you, is because you're trying to enshrine the Second Amendment forever, to provide a guarantee beyond the Constitution that no regulation will limit anyone's access, to a firearm.
That's not an unfair description, right? I am a Second Amendment partisan, if you will, right? I believe what I'm doing immeasurably enables the Second Amendment. It immeasurably expands it in a technical era, right? It allows our culture to move into the internet in the 21st century. What, I'm not allowed to believe that? I'm not allowed to advocate for that? I got to just sit down with some NGO that says, no, we don't think you should. Well, I think you should. We can't have organizations that are on my side of the debate.
I don't know how to make a gun, but I do know I've seen you talk about how I could buy that thing behind you and make one in my kitchen.
Great question. So would you like to know how to make the gun? Yes or no? Like you can choose that you don't want to make it. Do you get to make that choice for someone else? I don't think you do.
I think you know who's going to get access to these weapons.
But look, what I just gave you is a fundamental question. You know that there's a difference between me and a gun seller. You know it. But you want to make it like it's the same thing.
No, I do agree. There is a difference between you and a gun seller. A gun seller has a heavier political burden. There are laws in place stopping that gun seller. The reason we're having this conversation right now is because you have the ability to publish these plans without restriction, and there are people who are fighting you on that.
Without restriction. When you say it, I think people are going to hear something different than what that legally actually means.
Does it or does it not mean that a person who can't get a gun because of a court order, because they've been beating their wife, can get it from you? Get the intellectual property necessary to build a gun from you.
So that court order, right? Does that prevent people from reading books on guns at that point? Does it prevent people from downloading plans on guns? It doesn't. So what? I'm a felon. Let's say
You've taken the gap.
Let's say I'm a felon now. I can no longer learn about certain things in science. I can no longer read books on certain. You know what I mean? Like you can't draw this line.
Oh, really? So all the way up to nuclear fusion. People can make nuclear weapons
if
if you read the books and you want to.
Wait.
If you want to,
no, this is great.
Hey, look, no. This is if you want to enrich uranium in your bathroom, and you have the technical knowledge, it's free speech.
You know that practically speaking, this is very difficult. But if I knock over the liquor store, do I not have the right to learn about nuclear fusion and become an engineer for the Army at some point later in my life? You would say no. How would you justify it?
You're making it me. It's not me.
No, it is you. It's in your question. I'm adopting the settled American law on speech, right? On the rights to speech.
Speech is constantly being debated.
Publishers do not have
none of these
get
laws
approval or licenses to speak in this country. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked.
It worked in cryptocurrency and encryption because there are dual uses for those technologies. This is a different can of worms.
The state, if you're going to use dual use on me, the State Department makes that designation. The State Department in this case has made the designation that arms up to 50 caliber don't have a military use.
Is the Trump administration your friend in all this?
I believe the Trump administration has nothing to do with this. This is a settled arms export control reform initiative which has lasted for 10 years, more than 10 years in my understanding.
So why the sudden reversal from the State Department, which was fighting you for years in court?
There was no reversal. This is all marketing.
Why the abrupt settlement?
It's not an abrupt settlement.
As recently as April, they were fighting you in court.
The settlement's not abrupt. The procedural posture of the case was always on an injunction question. We got to a point where when these rules were finally announced, when they were finally ready, the DOJ would have been in the uncomfortable position of literally allowing this for the American public, but suing one company in the country. You would have been worse off if they didn't make the settlement. I would have won this free and clear at the Supreme Court on the First Amendment.
Now that there's so much attention on this case and on your company, what do you think the future holds?
I think there's every reason now for people to lay down or like a DOJ not to defend this or something, but ultimately it shouldn't matter. If the judiciary, is what it's supposed to be, this is pretty easy. I mean, I got a license from the federal government to speak.
You've said in the past that if there's some sort of a change and the authorities come here to take your files, to shut you down, that you would call out a militia.
That was a counterfactual. But no, of course, I'd always follow the law. I've always, ever followed the law in this country. And this is what I think burns people. Like, I've always pursued licenses with the ATF. I have a license with the State Department, right? I know what it is to be a regulated publisher, to be a regulated seller of even my equipment here under the Commerce Department. I screen people according to every law, every article that I'm supposed to. I participate in ATF special investigations. I respond to subpoenas from the different U.S. attorneys around this country. I am nothing if not compliant with every single law and every single power that has jurisdiction over me.
Why do you think people call you one of the most dangerous men in the world? In fact, you've been named that twice by a national magazine.
People need something to be entertained by, probably.
So you're giving me the Joe Namath on these lawsuits. Guaranteed victory.
No, I'm not saying that.
You think you're going to win? You
know how the judicial process is. It's a very political process, but I believe ultimately we have the law on our side here. And I think the hill is even greater now for them to climb. Our enemies should have intervened years ago, right? But now it's convenient to because it's easier to market on it. It's easier to advertise about it.
If the political winds shift and your operation is threatened, are you prepared to take up arms?
No, look, the political winds shift every 3 or 4 years.
You'll sit it out.
I built this company under the more adverse situation, right? I built this company during the Obama presidency.
I have to ask because of the arm dripping blood, holding a sword.
Classic Texas symbol, right? It shows the resolve of like the Texan conscience. We would fight, we would waste our money, we would build these things even though we know it would ruin us. That's what that symbol means back there. I'll stand here and help people and give them this information, even if every attorney general in this country pulls me into every venue and ruins me. I know that
Even if tomorrow somebody downloads one of your guns, makes it, and commits a heinous act?
look, I accept that that's a possibility. Like, I accept it. I believe that there's enough. Now, we've gone over this multiple times, man. You're not going to shame me.
You accept that it's a possibility.
You're just not going to shame me into not speaking. I won't be shamed. This is
You
a
were
form
shameless.
in this sense.
When you smile like that, I think people don't.
Because it's
believe-
TV. You're giving me TV models. Oh, you're shamed. You know, look. And I get the game, okay? But I think something of what I believe in will come through here. I believe radically in what I'm doing. I won't stop what I'm doing. You're not going to shame me out of doing it. What I'm doing is legally protected. You can convince some judge or some district court that I have to stop. I will go to the appellate level. I will go to the Supreme Court. I will waste all my time. And perhaps that's the goal, to get me to waste more time, more years, all this stuff. Do everything you can to fight me. Fine. What I'm telling you is I'm here to do it, and there will be people after me. And the internet serves our interests and will allow us to do this easier than you could ever stop it.
Take me to the future. If your vision is successful, what does it look like?
I mean, in a sense, I succeeded, man. In a sense, it's already happened. You know what I mean? My vision was, years ago, well, one day you could just download this stuff easy in one place, and you have access to these things, and the gun culture can kind of blossom from it. Because now, instead of me digging around in machine shops and looking for plans, I just know where to go to get them. It's like an encyclopedic resource. In a sense, that happened. What's the future of that look like? I don't know. I think it becomes easier to become a small business in firearms. It becomes easier to make custom parts and things like we see in 3D printing. What does 3D printing actually add? It doesn't replace traditional processes, but it adds, you can more rapidly prototype. You can more actively customize. It takes this promise that it gives to every other industry, and it gives it to our industry as well.
In practicality, anywhere there's a computer, there'll be a gun. That's the future?
I've said that. That's like the radical libertarian possibility of it, right? You know a gun in some sense is downloadable. What this means is there's no one standing between you and your computer. There's no one standing between your computer and the printer, right? These decisions are radically yours
And the
to
printer
make.
can make a gun.
The printer can make the parts of a gun. On some guns, yes, this can happen. Mills can make these parts.
Because of things you've said in the past, I have to ask this question. What do you say to people who think you're a radical and an anarchist who only wants to watch the world burn?
Everything I do here is constructive. I have built more. I employ more. I've produced more wealth and interest in intellectual property. I'm a builder.
So to be clear, your goal is not to take down the federal government.
To be very clear, if the attorneys general succeed in their lawsuit, they would have cut through and burned way more of our legal structure than I have. I have simply abided by what is, petitioned to the authorities about what should be, never cut any corners legally. I have no state power, right? I'm not a state. I can't interrupt your access to these things. I build things.
Somebody coming to this conversation for the first time, turning on their TV today, what do you want them to know about who you are and what you're doing?
I want people to know that we're friends of freedom. It's about freedom for us. And this is the most consistent and wholesome American purpose and set of ideas that there's ever been. Yeah, we come from Texas. Maybe we disagree about what freedom means.